Well, hey everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. And this week, my first question comes from Cham826, who says, "Hey Steve, I'd like your opinion as a guy on a pretty personal matter. My husband is undergoing treatment for prostate cancer, and we haven't had sex for over a year. Now it looks like it might be another year of treatment ahead. I'm perfectly fine waiting for him to get healthy, and I've told him as much, but it's hard to get him to talk about his feelings regarding my feelings. I'm wondering if you found yourself in the situation where your ability to have sex were turned off for a year or two. Would you prefer a wife who is nonchalant and patient, or would you prefer a wife who is longing and anticipatory?" I can only speak for myself, so I don't know if you regard your husband and me as being similar in any way or having a similar temperament or whatever, but I think I would prefer the nonchalance. I would prefer, because then I would feel like I wasn't under any pressure. If you told me that it's cool, I can wait, it's not a big deal, and that was that, then that would sort of put my mind at ease. Whereas if I had the sense that you were like, really waiting, or like you were very anticipatory for when the sex would resume. I mean, even though like I guess I would want to know that my partner was receptive, that my partner was looking forward to it. You don't want to feel like, you know what, we haven't had sex for 2 years. It's actually, you know what, let's just leave things the way they are. Things are good right here. You don't necessarily want that to happen. But at the same time, you don't want to feel like, oh shit, what if the doctor comes back and says it's going to be another 6 months or another 8 months or another year? What if things turn out to be even worse than we thought? Like, I wouldn't want it to be a source of tension or a source of conflict in the relationship. So as long as you were sincerely cool and willing to wait, and that it wasn't sort of a hardship or a trial for you, I would prefer the nonchalance. But again, that's just me. Like, I feel like I can tell you what I think I would do, having never been in that circumstance. I can sort of try and guess what I would do or what I would feel or what I would want. But I don't know if that's what your husband would want or not. But I hope that helps. Henrik Eriksson. Okay, so let's twist it around a bit. Do you know of any movie that you seriously disliked as when you were younger, but realized how good it was in later years? An example of that for me would most likely be 2001. Did not like it when I was young, but as I grew up, I realized the magnificence of it. Probably the best example of that for me would be Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. For a very long time, for many years, The Shining was the only Kubrick film that I really didn't have much appreciation for. I didn't like it. I didn't get it. I found it slow moving. I found it dull. I didn't think it was particularly scary. I just didn't connect with it. And I don't know why, I connected with all of the other Kubrick films that I saw. Kubrick was really the first director that I kind of latched onto and thought of as, a great filmmaker, as a director whose work really meant something to me. And The Shining was just his one movie that I just didn't really connect with. But now I do. I watched it again for the first time a few years ago at the suggestion of my friend Matt, who is the director of the film company that I write for in Hagerstown, Neon Reel Entertainment. And he said, you should go, if it's been a few years since you have watched it, you should go back and check it out again. And I did, and he was right. For whatever reason, time had passed, my taste in movies had changed or grown more inclusive, or I noticed things in it that I didn't notice before. Whatever the reason, it clicked with me, and I now really regard it as a great film. So yeah, I don't know exactly why. I can't quite put my finger on what made the difference. But The Shining is definitely the best example of a movie that when I was younger, I just thought, and now I think, wow, that's a great movie. Terry Williams, another week, another question. We know you are a writer and you've written a few films. Also, you are a big fan of television shows. What TV show currently running right now would you jump at the chance to be on the writing staff for? What ideas would you bring to the table for that show? If we're talking fiction, I would love to write for season 2 of Netflix's Daredevil. I mean, that's kind of that's like, sort of a dream job, I guess. I would love to do that. I would love to explore the villains a little bit more. I thought the villains in the first season of Daredevil were splendid. Where I just loved the characterization of Fisk and of Wesley and Owlsley, and I thought all of the villainous characters were just done incredibly well. And I loved the way the show dealt with the moral problems with what Daredevil was doing. I love it when superhero stories acknowledge that maybe the superheroes shouldn't be doing this. Maybe they don't have a right to do what they're doing. I think that's a wonderful tension. I was just talking about that with my wife actually today. We were watching an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and we were talking about that. I would, I mean, and in another way, it would be cool to write for Gotham, because I think Gotham is terrible. And I would be interested to see if I could bring a new perspective or try to shape Gotham into, a decent show, or at least a more fun show, a more reliably entertaining show. That would be fun. What else? Oh, The Last Man on Earth. If you're not watching The Last Man on Earth, it just finished its first season. It had a 13-episode run on Fox, starring Will Forte and Kristen Schaal as sort of the two main characters. It is so funny. One of the best new comedies I've seen in a long, long time. I would love to write for that show. Wig Moose. Hey, Steve, what is your opinion of hospitals that use quack treatments like acupuncture and naturopathy? Side question, do you think there should be laws to protect patients from quackery and all treatments that are not evidence-based? Oh, yes. Yes, I do think there should be laws against those sorts of things. I think the law should define those sorts of quack treatments. And by the way, I don't support them being used at hospitals. I don't consider them medicine. I don't think they should be used. I think the law should recognize those sorts of treatments, what you call quack treatments, as a form of fraud. I think it should be illegal to offer them as medical treatments or as therapies for something. I just don't think it should be allowed. I don't understand how it isn't fraud. If you claim to offer a service to someone and you take money in exchange for offering a service that you are incapable of providing. Now, you may believe you're capable of providing it. You may think that you're a healer. You may think that you're a psychic or whatever. But if there's no evidence to establish independently that you are, or that your method of treatment is doing anything to help anybody, then I don't think you should be allowed to take money for doing it. And I think if you do, then you should be liable, you should be vulnerable to being prosecuted for fraud. And I have never heard a single explanation that I found satisfying as to why this should not be the case. It is a form of fraud to me, and it should be treated as such, and it should not be used in hospitals. Matt77 Christian. Steve, many religions in the past have fizzled, dried up, and were blown away. Example, Greek and Roman mythology, Norse mythology. But it seems like they were replaced by other religions, in this case Christianity. Now that there seems to be a lot more of us atheists out there, and Christianity now seems to be in the crosshairs, do you think it will ever be banished into oblivion? I'm not sure, because it doesn't seem like a religion has ever been exterminated without another religion taking its place. Thoughts? I think religion is like any other aspect of culture in that it just unavoidably will evolve and will change through time. Religion does have institutions in place that sort of counteract that force, that try to freeze it and keep it from evolving and keep it from changing. But even those are not foolproof. And even though Christianity, at least certain forms of Christianity, have tried to keep it from changing and keep it from evolving, they have not succeeded. And I think it's good that they haven't. I think it's good that Christianity and that the Christian concept of truth and of morality in general has evolved as the rest of society, the rest of culture's ideas about those things have evolved. Hasn't evolved as far. If you ask me, hasn't evolved far enough. You know, Christianity, especially very hardcore evangelical fundamentalist Christianity, is still a repository of mores and morals that are now considered to be archaic by a lot of us. It's still a stronghold of various types of bigotry, like homophobia and sexism and transphobia and things that the rest of us are doing a better job of trying to move beyond. So I think Christianity will just naturally evolve. I think it would be silly to say, well, it'll never go away. I don't think there's any element of human culture, no matter how firmly entrenched it is today, or has been for many, many centuries, that we can say it'll just always be with us. I think we'll probably have some form of religion with us for as long as there are people, just because I think there's something about our brains that encourages us, that leaves us with a tendency to want to believe in those sorts of things, or to want to grab onto answers that claim to be certain, even if they really aren't, just because we crave that. But I don't think that I would say that Christianity itself would always be with us. I don't know what will replace it. I don't know if a more reasonable system would ever replace it or what. But I don't think it'll be with us forever. I think it's a cultural evolutionary inevitability that it will go away at some point. William Wright. George Carlin was once asked in an interview how he didn't suffer a strong emotional connection from the sad truths he would make light of in his comedy. His answer was to become an observer, to disconnect oneself from the human race and view the human experience as mere entertainment. How would you answer the question Carlin was asked, and do you agree with his answer? I think Carlin was onto something. I think it is a great help, both in terms of your perspective when you're trying to form opinions about things and trying to work out what you think and what you feel about things, and also just in terms of your mentality, your peace of mind, your emotional stability, to be able to separate yourself, to be able to sort of remove yourself and take more of an observer type position. I think that's a very good skill to have. I think it's a very useful and a very healthy skill to have. I would not wish to be that way all the time. I don't want to be permanently removed from society, from humanity. I want to be in a position where I am touched and moved and angered and outraged and saddened and overjoyed and impressed, etc., by human events most of the time. But I also want to sort of keep that option of taking a step back when I need to. I think Carlin's method is sound. I just wouldn't want that to be the only way I was capable of observing or relating to other people or to human affairs in the broader sense. Becca Hawkins. Hey Steve, it strikes me as odd that feminism has become a big boogeyman among certain male atheist communities, and I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate your unapologetic feminism. What are your thoughts on the strange amount of strident, obsessive anti-feminism in certain atheist communities? Why did this become a thing, as it were? I think it became a thing because it just so happened that some of the largest most popular atheist YouTubers have that point of view. I think, unfortunately for our community and unfortunately for the way atheists, particularly online and YouTube atheists, are perceived by people from outside the group, some of the first and still biggest, most prominent YouTube atheist celebrities were of that male, white, anti-feminist, I think you put it right when you say obsessively anti-feminist point of view. I think it's down to that, and then their audiences were largely built I won't say predominantly, I wouldn't even say to the point of it being a majority of their audiences, but a very large portion of their audiences then became people who responded to that viewpoint, who heard someone say something anti-feminist and said, oh, I agree with that guy, I'm going to follow him, I'm going to take his side. And then it just sort of grew from there, and it became a very vocal and very prominent part of our community, and I would say probably one of the most embarrassing parts of our community, one of the most mortifying parts. I try not to be too pessimistic about it. I try to look at things with the same perspective that my friend Christy Winters says when she was asked a similar question in one of her videos recently. She said that she doesn't think that those sort of strident, angry, obsessive anti-feminists are a huge portion of the atheist population. It's just that they are the loudest and they are the most vocal, and that if we could actually take some kind of a census of what self-identifying atheists thought about gender issues or sexuality issues, that we would find that the number of anti-feminist, misogynist, sexist atheists was not significantly higher than in the general population. I would hope that that would be true. I try in my more optimistic moments to believe that and to operate from that assumption. But however many of them there are, they are very loud, they are very noticeable, they are very embarrassing, and I think the main reason that they are in that way, that they are so visible, is because, unfortunately, some of the most visible YouTubers of an atheist point of view are anti-feminist. Ezra Henderson. Hey Steve, I recently had a discussion about the freedom of religion laws saying that businesses should not choose to not serve gay people based on a homophobic bias. This person said that a gay couple going into a Christian wedding business is like a person going to a vegan restaurant and asking for a steak. I wish this was a joke because this was said by one of my family members. I explained why this point wasn't valid, saying that the situation of a gay person going to a Christian wedding business was like a cattle rancher going in a vegan restaurant and requesting a vegan meal, in that the rancher wanted a vegan meal but didn't believe in the same morals as the owner. This person wouldn't see how the point they made was invalid and went on to make similar points. I lost my patience and said I respectfully disagreed. To sum it up, how could I have not lost my patience and maybe gotten through to my relative? Call me idealistic for trying to do this in Texas, but I feel passionate about equal rights for all. Thanks, I love the show. Well, I appreciate your passion for equal rights, especially in what sounds like a relatively hostile environment for that sort of point of view. Actually, it was another viewer of mine who left a comment a few weeks ago on a video of mine where this issue was addressed, this issue of discrimination and these so-called religious freedom restoration laws. And I apologize that I can't remember your name or I can't remember who it was, but if the person who left this comment and gave me this illustration is watching this, please feel free to comment and identify yourself because I think you deserve credit. I think it's a really great way of putting it. And the comment said something like this. It's a form of discrimination if you are denying a service to one person that you would be willing to do for another person. So if you are, and these laws for whatever reason seem to have centered over bakeries. Bakeries are the battlegrounds on which this battle is waged. So let's say you own a bakery and a gay couple come to your bakery and they ask you to make them a wedding cake, and you say, I'm not going to make you a wedding cake because I don't believe in same-sex marriage. The reason why that's discrimination is because if a straight couple came into your establishment and wanted to hire you to make a wedding cake, you would take the job. So you're denying a service to one person on the basis of their sexual orientation that you would provide to another person or another party because their sexual orientation was something that you approve of. That is discrimination. It doesn't mean that you can walk into any business and demand any service you want, and if they don't give it to you, then that's discrimination. A lot of people use the example of, well, what if a bakery was owned by a black person and a KKK group came in and asked for a cake with a really hateful, racist message written on it? Wouldn't the black baker be forced under anti-discrimination laws to provide such a cake? And the answer is no. Because he could very easily say, I will not make a cake with a hate message on it. And I wouldn't do that for your group, and I wouldn't do it for anyone else's group. I would not make a cake that had hate speech. Then it wouldn't be discrimination. If you wouldn't do it for anyone, then it's not discrimination. If you would do it for some people but not for others, then it's discrimination. So the whole the whole construct of, well, it's like a vegan going into a steakhouse and demanding a vegan meal, that's not a valid illustration at all. That's not what it is. If a vegan went in to a steakhouse and ordered a salad, which was on the menu, and the owner of the steakhouse knew that the customer was a vegan and said, no, I'm not going to serve you that salad because you're a vegan and we eat meat here, then it would be a case of discrimination. But no, anti-discrimination laws do not give you the right to just walk into an establishment and demand anything you want and then cry discrimination when you don't get it. That's not what they're there for. That's not what they're intended to do. That's not what discrimination is. Now, what that is a thunderclap.
The lightning round. Rapid fire questions. Glib and adequate answers.
A skeptical owl. How likely do you think it is that Adi is secretly planning to kill you? Quite likely. Quite likely. I especially when I wake up in the morning and I see her sitting in my doorway, just staring at me silently. She really looks like a murderer in those moments. Dangerously talented. Okay, Shives, how would you make a Batman-Superman crossover more kick-ass than what they are doing right now? That is Superman and Batman duking it out. Well, in a sense, you're asking the wrong guy, because my Superman and Batman movie would not be about them having a fight. I think that's boring. I don't see what the story is there. I don't see why I or anyone else should be interested in a story about Batman and Superman just having a fight. Batman saying, "Do you bleed? You will." That just sounds... Not only is it grim and depressing, but it just sounds boring to me. I would actually want to write a story that involved both Batman and Superman. Gaggle or Gwaggle. It's a shame that I don't know how to pronounce your name because you comment all the time. Google. Let's try that. Why is there a grayish line toward the right side of the otherwise black screen when the video starts? I've noticed this in a lot of Steve's videos, but I don't think I've seen it anywhere else. Well, that is an image that I use instead of going to a perfect black. And that's because I noticed a really irritating bug in YouTube videos that I would upload where if I had too long of a black space, if I were to cut to black for a second or two or fade to black for a second or two, YouTube, for whatever reason, would cut out the black and would replace it with the first frame where something other than black is visible, and would sort of freeze frame that for however long the black was there. And it got really irritating to me because I didn't want that there. I wanted black there. So I came up with an image that looks mostly black but has some stuff in it so that it doesn't get cut out. Now, I don't know if that glitch has since been fixed or what, but it happened to me enough times that I decided to use an image with a little bit of stuff in it instead of just a flat black image. JJ Talks, you're saying mermaids don't exist. Have you ever seen me? Not from the waist down. Sabrina Loizides Meredith. Hey, Steve, what's your favorite scary movie? You know, it's strange that you would ask that after the question I got earlier. Now, I mean, The Shining would be really high on that list, actually. I don't know if it would be my very favorite scary movie, but it would be pretty high. The original F.W. Murnau Nosferatu is pretty high. Actually, the Herzog Nosferatu is pretty high, too. Dawn of the Dead is a great one. Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead, is a great one. There's a lot of movies that are like favorite scary movies of mine. Clarence Crawford. Steve, I was wondering how you thought of the character of Stuffy, Toby Benson, Jack McPherson, Millicent. Actually, those were sort of, with the exception of Stuffy, who was pretty much all mine, most of the rest of their personalities, and especially like their histories and backstories and whatever, is sort of a collaboration between me and my wife. We developed the characters just by playing with the stuffed animals, just by doing voices and playing with the animals to crack each other up over the years, and they sort of grew into their own people. Actually, in the case of Millicent, her personality almost entirely came from Ashley. We bought the stuffed dog at Toys R Us, and Ashley started doing the voice and playing with it on the drive home. And by the time we got home from Toys R Us, which was like a 25-minute drive, we had most of Millicent's personality pretty much laid out. Like, that's just who she was. That's just the voice that came out and the attitude that came out when Ashley started talking as Millicent. So that's how that happened. It's actually a really cool sort of collaborative creative process. Thomas Allister. Hey, Steve, do you even like tea? Yeah. Why would you think I don't like tea? I love tea. I mean, I'm not a snob about it. I'm sure someone who was like, you know, a real serious tea drinker might be appalled at my palate or my tea drinking habits, but yeah, I love tea. I like tea quite a bit. Skeptic Fox, quick question. Koala or panda? Which is cuter? I would have to say panda, and for this reason. I think pandas are adorable even though I know that one of them could kill me. That's how cute a panda is. That even with the knowledge that it could murder me if it felt like it, I still think it's adorable. I still would go, oh. Like if a panda was attacking me, probably my last words would be, oh. That's how cute a panda is to me. Radical Bacon, why are your ears so pink? It's because you're white, right? Yeah, I guess. Or maybe the white balance is off. I don't know. Do they look pink now? Serendipitous Rex, did Age of Ultron suffer from having too many characters? Yes, it did, but it was well balanced enough. I think Joss Whedon, as a writer and director, was skillful enough at sort of juggling everybody and keeping all of his balls in the air that it didn't suffer as much as it might have under a less skilled director or a less skilled writer. But yeah, I do think there were an awful lot of characters in that movie. I do think if it had not had to serve multiple masters, that is, if it had not had to not only be a good film in its own right, but also set up stuff for future episodes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think you could have lost some of those characters, and it would have been a little tighter, a little more focused, and a smaller cast. But yeah, I don't think it suffered to the point that it became a bad movie. I still think it was a great movie. It was just awfully packed with people. Hey, that's it for the lightning round. That was the last question. Always nice to end on a comic book question, I find. Time for the shout-out. The shout-out this week goes to someone who is also kind of a comic fan. Actually, he's a versatile YouTuber, someone who I just discovered a few weeks ago, and I really love his stuff. The shout-out this week goes to SageLion. SageLion is another one of these YouTubers that I've been trying to give shout-outs to over the last few weeks, who really just gives me hope. Just makes me optimistic for the future of the YouTube progressive, atheist, humanist, whatever community. SageLion is a guy who is a progressive, who is a humanist, who is a feminist, who does hangouts where he offers a voice, he offers to share his platform with other like-minded people, people who maybe do not have as loud of a voice in the atheist or humanist secular YouTube community as they might have. Sort of following up of Becca's question from earlier with how prominent, how loud and inescapable the anti-feminist voices are in the secular YouTube community. SageLion does his part to try and counteract that. And I am just a big fan of his now. I really enjoy his work. And as I said earlier, he is a comic book fan, or at least a fan of comic book type stuff. The impression I get, I haven't talked to him a whole lot about these sorts of things, but he did a hangout a few weeks ago about the new Netflix Daredevil series, which I thought was really interesting. It was interesting to hear the thoughts that he and his guests had on that show, which I, as I've said before, am just a huge fan of. So whether you like superhero stuff, comic book sort of nerdy stuff, or whether you like hearing a really reasonable, open, humane, progressive voice that cares about social justice and cares about human rights and all those sorts of things, SageLion is highly, highly recommended from me to you. Go check out his channel, see if it's your type of thing, and if you feel, as I do, that he deserves some attention and some support, please consider subscribing to his channel. It is an excellent channel. I highly recommend it. SageLion. Well, that's it for me, everybody. That's the shout-out. Those are the questions. I feel like I answered a bunch of them. I think I've done my bit this time around. Please leave a comment on this video to ask me your question for next time, because I can't do this unless you guys ask me some questions. You have to ask for this to happen. And this is actually one of my favorite things to do on this channel, is to be able to interact with you guys and to answer questions. And you can ask me a question about really anything you could possibly think of. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. And I will answer as many of them as I possibly can in the next video in this series. So thank you for watching, everybody. And take care. I don't know what I was trying to do there, but I did it. And it's staying in.